And welcome to another edition of Two Steps Ahead podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. So how you doing? Coming up on the show, let's take a look at a couple of things that have developed in the aftermath of the election. Not going to dwell on the election results themselves, although I do have some information just to pass along so we could set the table for what we're going to talk about, because the aftermath of the election, especially with stuff that I'm seeing on social media, is absolutely 1,000% unbelievable. Now, if you follow us, you know that we have just kind of done 3 or 4 episodes recently about a championship mindset, a championship thought process, preparation, achieving our goals, chasing our dreams, things like that. And so that's the perspective or the angle that I want to take going into this conversation in this post-election world that we're living in right now. But first off, let's just take a look now at the latest. So Trump won the election. He has 312 electoral votes, I guess. So a pretty convincing landslide win, as they say. He won the popular vote by over 5 million votes. So he's got a significant win. It wasn't a split. He won the electoral votes, but Kamala won the popular vote. No, he won both in a convincing manner. Each state that he won was by a big enough margin that no recount was automatically triggered, and it wasn't even close enough for Harris to even want a recount. So the margin of victory in each state was pretty significant, at least as far as recounts and stuff go, 2-3 points, which again is not a lot in the scheme of things, but in the election compared to 2020, that's absolutely huge. Then, so you have a convincing and commanding win. But now, between now and January 20th, the Democrats can't do anything. They can't challenge the election in any fashion whatsoever. They can't do anything because they spent the last 4 years trying to convince the American people that Donald Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election by doing all these things. And so this is a done deal. But it's the aftermath that is fascinating because you're dealing with adults. You're dealing with so-called professionals, people that have families, moms that have kids, professionals that have jobs, and the aftermath is absolutely unbelievable. So I was watching the election. I was up till like 4 a.m. because it was highly entertaining to watch all the different channels, especially in the mainstream media, and all the different reactions. And the first one that caught my mind or caught my attention was Juan Williams coming on Fox and starting to spread the fact that it was a racist and misogynist election. He started throwing out the race card, saying that people did not vote for Kamala Harris because of race. Now, Karl Rove tried to shut him down, but it went back and forth. And then Sonny Hostin on The View, Michael Steele on CNN, and it goes on and on and on. Andrea Mitchell on whatever she's on. Everyone started to do this race card, this misogynist card. Now, think about this for a minute. Trump made major gains with the Black and Latino voters, with young voters as well. And now apparently Black voters are racist and misogynist because they did not vote for a woman. Latino voters are misogynist and racist because they did not vote for a Black woman. So everybody is now racist. Everybody is misogynist. Trump won with young people. He won with the Black vote, the Latino vote, the male vote. There was a segment of the statistics that even said uneducated white women. I don't know why they clarify all that or qualify it, but he won in a lot of significant areas when it comes to demographics. Educated women apparently are the only ones that Kamala Harris really had the handle on. But you take a look at the response, and it's no surprise that the response is that way, especially when you are told by these same pundits that people that followed Trump were garbage, deplorables, Nazis, white supremacists, fascists, racists, misogynists. And it's basically the vileness in their heart that is coming out of their mouth. But apparently 72 million people now are misogynist, garbage, deplorable, Nazi, white supremacist, fascist, racist, and anything else that has come out since then. But then you have the fun of social media. Now, before social media comments, I find it interesting that, Joe Biden had 81 million votes and Kamala was only able to get like 67, 68 million, I guess, as of this moment in time. What happened to the 13 million other voters that voted for Biden? They magically disappeared, I guess. But when you take a look at social media and what happened with social media, this is what went down.
I'm sorry. No. Why? Do you really hate me that bad? What is wrong with you? I can't do this anymore. I'm literally sick. I'm literally sick to my stomach. What has happened to America? What has happened to democracy? What has happened to freedom?
What the hell? You cannot be serious. How did I wake up to this garbage as my president? That's right, garbage. I went to bed last night and she was ahead. I woke up to this freaking nightmare. Donald Trump? How?
Woke up this morning feeling spicy. You guys feel spicy? Because I do. All right. I don't know how to use this thing. Let's see what happens. Is this cutting off hair? I'm going to have to cut it shorter than that. Buzz it down, right? I think that this is too... it's getting hair. Let's see here. Maybe I got to cut it. There we go. Have I given up on America? Yeah. I've also given up on coloring this hair because, right? Coloring my hair. Having my hair be long and luxurious. All that being skinny, being hot, and all the things that the patriarchy wants us to be. Because clearly, they don't give a about us. And I'm talking to you, too.
I like that last one. If you're watching on the video portion of the show that's on YouTube, Rumble, or our website, RadioWarp.com, she's actually trying to cut her hair with shavers, and she can't do it. And then she's talking about how she doesn't want to be skinny anymore. She doesn't want to be beautiful anymore. She doesn't want to be all these things anymore because the patriarch, that's what the patriarch wants. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't that what you want for yourself? Some self-pride? But keep that in mind because we're going to discuss a little bit about that later. But you've got people curled up on the couch, sucking their thumbs, tears streaming down their mascara-stained cheeks. I mean, it's unbelievable, the lamenting about the loss of the election, adults blubbering about how they can't cope, they can't go to work, teachers coming on social media with videos of how am I going to tell my students what happened? Well, how about you just do your job and educate? Because we've got more information on the state of education in this country too coming up, so stick with me. You've got posts everywhere of women saying their rights were taken away. Mom, kids with IEPs saying their kids can't go to school anymore. All kinds of pathetic absurdities from grown-ass adults. Where are we in society? Where's this coming from? I mean, it just shows how weak we have become in society, at least a certain segment of society, how soft we have become. It kind of reminds me of a video I saw where these kids are playing flag football and they've got full pads on, shoulder pads, helmet, knee pads, thigh pads, the whole thing. And they're playing flag football. They got flags around their waist. It's like, what have we come to? It's the generation that we're not going to keep score because if we keep score, someone might lose and we don't want people to lose. I mean, it's unbelievable. Just scroll through social media. You see grown adults. That one guy saying he went to bed when Kamala was ahead. Well, first of all, she was never ahead. So I don't know what he's talking about. But it's just on and on and on. They've drank the Kool-Aid so much that now they have to deal with the fact that they were lied to. And that's the other thing, too. The Democrats, everybody all upset because the pollsters and everybody, that Iowa poll that came out that had Kamala up 3 points over Trump. I knew from the beginning that was crap. And everyone bought into it. And then all of a sudden it didn't turn out that way. And so now all these people feel like they were lied to by pollsters. And they just don't know how to handle it. But that's the stuff that just sets the table for what I really want to talk about as we get into it. But before we do, real quick, one of the aspects I think of playing sports and being involved in sports is the fact that you have to deal with loss. Whether it's you're a fanatic of your team and your team loses a big game, maybe the Yankees right now going through some despair, Yankee fans losing to the Dodgers in the World Series recently. Maybe your college football team is starting to lose and not make the playoffs or even maybe make a bowl. And so now you're dealing with that. So dealing with loss is a real thing. So yeah, if your candidate lost and you feel sad, depressed for a while, that's one thing. It's one thing to go through the emotion of grieving over a loss. It happens in sports. Look at the Nebraska volleyball team, Harper Murray. After she lost the championship game, she went up on the press conference and people called her bitchy because of her responses. She was upset. They were all upset, but most importantly, she was upset because she did not achieve her goals. And now she's come out and she's played this year on fire. But it's a different thing when you focus and channel your defeat and the emotions and you try to channel that into getting better, as opposed to sitting on the couch melting down like all these people screaming, cutting off your hair, doing all this radical nonsense. And there's more to come too. But one of the big things I saw, and education obviously is a big part of the show, is that you had all these moms freaking out, flooding social media with videos saying that their special education or their SPED student not going to be able to go to school, not be able to get an education. Not sure where that's coming from. I do think it comes from possibly the fact that maybe somewhere, someone, maybe Trump, somebody else mentioned doing away with the Federal Department of Education. That is a lot of people up in arms. I'm not sure if that's a Trump thing or a Project 25 thing that they've lumped in, but it came somewhere. But that's one thing I want to talk about is the Department of Education when it comes to education. And why wouldn't your kid be able to go to school? Why wouldn't any kid be able to go to school? Because they're misinformed and they don't understand how things are. And I'm here to tell you about that. And so you have an IEP or you go to school. But keep in mind that there's the Federal Department of Education and there's the states. Each state has a Department of Education. I'll just tell you right now. I was going to save it for later, but I'll tell you right now. The federal government does not run education. The states determine curriculum. The states determine what teachers need in order to be a teacher. State certifications. California would be different from, let's say, Nebraska, which might be different from, South Carolina. Now, there may be some reciprocity, but everybody's going to have different standards. I know in California, you have things like the CBEST, the CSET, and some other things outside and beyond of college, whereas in the Midwest, you have like the Praxis test. So there's different standards. That's not federal. That is state-governed policies that you have to do in order to teach in those schools. So the federal government has very little. The only thing they have is money. And money is what they dangle over the school districts to get them to abide by the policies that the Federal Department of Education want. Because if you want the money from the federal government, you have to do what they say and follow their policies. Now, if you're a rich enough district, which nobody is, you could turn that money aside. But we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first off, you have all these people, and maybe you've seen them with IEPs. What's an IEP? Well, it's a individual education plan that's designed to, one, identify a student's disability, and then two, create an educational goal that will fit that student. Okay? It's not meant to be the instructional plan. They're supposed to follow the curriculum of the general classroom, but it's a summary, like a big picture summary of what a student with special needs is going to be able to do. So, for example, if a student with special needs has a math sheet, maybe there's 20 math problems on the sheet. The expectation for general education students would be to do all 20. For the special ed, your IEP, maybe do 2 or 3, maybe 4. If you're going to take a test, maybe you have extra time to take the test or some other accommodations. So it's an individual education plan that allows for a student with special needs, and there are a whole slew of different things: autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and other learning disabilities and stuff like that. And so it allows a student to be able to have goals and a path for academic success according to their learning abilities, learning styles, what they are capable of learning. It's, I guess you could say it's like an accountability document, keeps the teachers accountable, the parents accountable. It's a legal document, it's a binding document. So there's a lot of things that go into it. And it follows the student. And every year you have a new meeting to see what worked, what didn't work, what goals were achieved, what goals weren't achieved, what things need to be changed. I've known some that have gotten off of IEPs. Some have kept them because you can take them all the way up until you're like 21 or 22. And so it makes sure that the student has measurable goals to reach, because again, you have curriculum that the general student would have to follow. But obviously a student with special needs, whether it's, let's say, dyslexia or ADHD or autism, can't fit those goals, can't reach those goals. So they determine that, okay, well, instead of doing all this, you're still required to do maybe this much, whatever it is. This is generalized. Each student is independent and individual. That's the IEP, Individual Education Plan. But it's measurable goals to reach so that they can get the services that they need. Maybe they need a speech pathologist to help them out. Maybe they need a reading specialist to help them to overcome their dyslexia. Whatever it is, this is what it does. It brings in extra resources for the student and allows them to have access to education. Because it wasn't until 1975 with the, I think it's the HCE, Handicapped Children Education Act, that students with disabilities weren't even allowed in school. They were just shoved off into institutions or whatever. So the HCE of 1975, which I think has now become the IDEA Act, I think Obama took care of that or renamed it in 2008 or whenever he was in office. So the concept is there, and it predated the 1980 establishment of the Department of Education. And so the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or that IDEA Act, is a federal law that mandates special education teachers be appropriately trained and have the knowledge and skills to serve children with disabilities. So that's something that Congress created back in 1975 in one version. And of course, it's changed over the years, but Congress, signed by a president, have put these bills and these laws into action. And so again, you have students with special needs, special education, have an individual education plan in order to help them follow the curriculum as best as they can and achieve measurable goals. So how does the Department of Education fit in all of this? The federal Department of Education. Okay. So unlike other countries, education in the United States is decentralized. You've had courts, you've had laws, you've had lawmakers, and it all comes down to the 10th Amendment. The federal government and the Department of Education are not involved in determining curricula or educational standards or establishing schools and colleges. It's a hands-off. The 10th Amendment basically is anything that doesn't apply to the federal government would go to states' rights, is really what it comes down to in generalities. And so you have the states with their individual departments of education. And again, parents freaking out on social media because their kid has an IEP. And I don't even know where it's coming from, but I'm thinking it's coming from the fact that perhaps the Department of Education is going to maybe be dismantled, changed, or whatever, and they think their kid isn't going to have an education. Well, first of all, it's the states that determine it, not the Department of Education at the federal level. And second, why are you freaking out? Because there's federal law that mandates that your child get education. And there's ways you can go. That's not going away. It's kind of like the abortion thing. Everybody freaked out. Oh, women's rights taken away because abortion taken away. The last election, 7 out of 10 states just voted in favor of having abortion in their states beyond the 12 weeks or whatever it was that they had going on. But the federal role of education is basically hands-off. It's a state and local responsibility. Communities as well, whether it's a public or a private organization. Obviously, the schools, public schools, cities, municipalities have to have those, while private schools could be anything, religious or just private. A lot of private schools have come about because of the sports world. But the federal role of the government in education really comes down to financing, although financing is pretty much state and local as well. But there's an estimated $1.5 trillion being spent nationwide on education at all levels. And a majority of that comes from the state, local, and private resources, especially at the elementary and secondary level. And then it goes from there. And so why are you freaking out? And then when it comes to food, like the lunch programs, that's the Department of Agriculture that works with schools to fund or to provide or whatever when it comes to school lunch programs. So from the website of and a lot of this comes from the Department of Education website, you can log on and check for yourself. And I encourage you to do that. Educate yourself. But you think about this. Here's their mission. Despite the growth of the federal role in education, not really sure what their growth is, but despite their growth, the department never strayed from what would become the official mission: to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. That's what it comes down to. The federal role of the government is to make sure that there's equal access and any funding they might have. Okay. And so that's what they're going to do. And so if you did away with it, and let's say Trump mentioned it or somebody mentioned it, here is a clip from 2014. Okay. Rand Paul was running for president in 2014, 2 years before Donald Trump even considered. This is before Donald Trump even considered running for president the first time. Okay. From 2014, here's Rand Paul talking about the state of education and the Department of Education at the federal level. Take a listen.
I think there are teachers who are like professional football players. You know, there's 1,000 professional football players. They're extraordinary. There's probably 10,000 extraordinary teachers. Let's find those teachers, put them on the internet, and have them teaching most of our kids. I'm not saying get rid of the teacher in the classroom, but if there's someone like the guy in Khan Academy is like an ex-business guy. He's not even a teacher, but he has an extraordinary ability to explain complex problems. I was on there the other day and watching him do little drawings and explain the Doppler effect. It was better than anything I'd ever had in school. And I was like, gosh, this guy needs to be teaching the Doppler effect for everybody. And that's what should happen, is extraordinary teachers should be filmed and broadcast in every class, colleges too. I mean, there's so much information and ability to transmit it that we need to allow for innovation and not just be stuck in the old model. But the old model is because people don't want to allow anybody to get involved with the system. And I'll give you an example. John Stossel did this thing on education a couple years ago, and they had 400 teachers who were inappropriate, touched kids inappropriately or did things with kids that made them, or they couldn't teach anymore. They couldn't fire them. They had them in a building in New York City, and they just were there day after day being paid, but nobody could fire them because the contract was 14 pages. The union you couldn't even fire a pedophile.
So there he's talking about the state of education back in 2014. I've got another clip coming up, but that kind of sets the table. The first thing he mentions is an alternative way to do education. Why is it now, 10 years later, that we are still in a classroom environment at desks and tables? A lot of kids can't sit quietly and sit still like the old days because of the way the world is today with technology, with everything. Why haven't we increased? Why haven't we modified the classroom beyond Kahoot and iPads? Why don't we do something that makes it interactive? I mean, you go to these museums and more museums. In fact, the Griffith Park Observatory in Los Angeles is more interactive than a lot of science classrooms in LA. Why don't we do things to make it interactive? So if you're recording people, could you imagine having a lesson from Elon Musk about something, or Warren Buffett about financing, or any number of people, and you're able to access that in the classroom? Wouldn't that be great? Or what about some reading skills and math skills? And then you have the classroom teacher reinforce it, but you could do all kinds of creative things with some of the geniuses that we have around the world. Teaching. There's a lot of times that I took college classes where my professor, not even in the same state, halfway across the country, videos uploaded that we'll sit and watch and then have curriculum based on that. Zoom meetings with classroom teaching and stuff. I mean, so there's so many ways that you can change education that can not only help the gen ed students, but also the special ed students. You can make it interactive. There's a lot of times where we're just sitting around with downtime because we're still on paper and pen, which is nothing wrong with that. But the way we do education is so antiquated these days. Look at what Elon Musk is doing. Did you watch that video of that spaceship that kind of came back to Earth and instead of splashing down in the ocean, went right back to the launch pad? There's a lot of cool things that some people are doing out there. You look at, I like watching college football. On Saturdays, they have a commercial from each school, and the school will have their commercial and showcase whatever they want. And there's a lot of labs that you will see on these commercials or projects or things that are happening. It's not just them in the lecture hall. They're in the laboratory. They're doing things. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do things and make it creative, make interactive? I mean, maybe that's one of the things I should have thought about and had some forethought into thinking. Could you imagine creating a model of William Shakespeare and having him recite his works? We know what he looks like. Or Plato, Socrates, having a debate on screen, models of what they look like. I mean, we've got AI, maybe it's coming. But there's a lot of ways we can do that. The Department of Education doesn't have anything to do with that. And so again, parents freaking out because their student has an IEP, and now all of a sudden, because of an election, you don't think your kid's going to have an education? It's at the state level. The states hold the primary responsibility for the following tasks: maintaining and operating public schools, establishing and selecting public school curriculum, regulating teaching methods and instructional materials, deciding on educational funding and special education programs, and setting standards for teacher qualifications. All states have different standards and policies, and this can impact the quality of education available. So, are you freaking out because perhaps the Department of Education at the federal level might go away? Well, again, let's go back to Rand Paul, 2014, 10 years prior to our current election, and 2 years prior before anyone heard of Donald Trump running for president.
A senator thinking of running for president of the United States, and you don't think the federal government should have any role in any of this?
I think
not
that
in terms of providing resources
education historically was a state and local a state and local subject, and I think that what we've seen is since we spend about $100 billion in the Department of Education each year, and that's been going on since 1980. I'm not sure we're better off than we were before. See, the one thing
well,
that
you
could probably help
propose a budget that would eliminate most of that, right?
Well, what I would do is I would have it spent at the state and local level. I wouldn't take it up there at all. I'd leave it at home. So you'd spend the money. You might still spend it in your state government, but education, even now, 95% of your education dollars are state and local. That $100 billion gets swirled around in a big bureaucracy up there. They send rules down that don't help education. They hinder innovation. I would cut them out of the loop. I don't think you'd notice if the whole department were gone tomorrow.
2014, probably wouldn't notice if the whole department was gone tomorrow. Take that $100 billion that floats around in the bureaucracy of the federal government and give it to the local level. 95% of funding comes from the local and state level. Education is not a federal thing. It's a local thing. So if you think a president can come in, probably it's the same thing. A lot of people thought Kamala Harris was going to be able to codify Roe v. Wade. President doesn't make policy. Congress does. Congress enacted the HCE back in 1975, which became the IDEA. So there's federal laws that mandate education access and certain things when it comes to it. Curriculum and all the other stuff, like we just mentioned, states level. So why are you freaking out because Donald Trump is president if you're a parent with IEP? In fact, let's take a look. Reading. This is from NAEP, the proficiency. This is somebody that keeps track of testing of students at grade level. So 33% of fourth graders are at proficiency, at or above proficiency in reading. 77% of fourth graders across this country right now are below grade level proficiency. 31% of eighth graders are at or above proficiency in reading. 79% are below grade level proficiency. What are we doing? and it's continuing to slide. In math, it's the largest decline in NAEP mathematics at grades 4th and 8th since initial assessment in 1990. This is a major decline. 8th grade, 75% below grade level proficiency. So our education system is failing our kids already for many reasons. A lot of them, Rand Paul said, from 10 years ago. You've got a lot of bad teachers. You got teachers that are just hanging on for their pension. You've got teachers that are just hanging on for whatever reason. They're not doing their jobs anymore. Why can't you have video conference? We have TED Talks. Why can't you have something, a subject, science, space, physics, whatever? Have an Elon Musk or somebody like that do a video on it, put it through the classrooms. We got to start thinking differently, out of the box when it comes to education. But again, if you were in school at any time prior to 1980, okay? So this is for the older adults. If you were in school anytime prior to 1980, how was it? Do you know that you were in school when there was no federal Department of Education? Did you know that? Did it affect your education? Probably not. So I don't think it's time to panic if you're a parent and say that, oh, my kid's not going to be educated, because you, first of all, need to be an advocate and go to, instead of crying on the couch with your thumb in your mouth or smashing your dashboard or freaking out, whatever you're doing, and putting it on social media trying to get sympathy, even though you're now in the minority because a majority of the popular vote went to Trump and supports what he wants. Why don't you sit there and be an advocate for better education, be an advocate for better reading proficiency, better math proficiency? And you can go online, NAEP, check it out for yourself. They have all the subjects there, but reading, math, and now science tend to be the big three that they monitor because those are the core classes. Why don't you be an advocate? Get off the couch. Do something. But like Rand Paul said 10 years ago, education, they don't want people in. They want to keep it to themselves. Go complain to Randi Weingarten. She makes $100 billion a year or something like that, and all she does is rant and rave at press conferences. She's the head of the teachers union. Maybe the teachers union needs to go. Maybe that's inhibiting education. But instead of freaking out and panicking, why don't you do something to help the state of your education that your child is getting now? Are you making sure that your IEP is updated? Are you making sure you go to the meetings? Are you making sure you're your best advocate, not just accepting what the teachers and people tell you, but actually trying to push back and say, this is what my kid needs? Be the best advocate for your kid. Stop feeling sorry for yourself because your candidate lost. The other thing I see on social media, women losing their rights, freaking out. Again, not sure what rights we're talking about. Mentioned it earlier. If it's the abortion and healthcare rights, well, 7 out of 10 states just passed laws that said abortion is fine. Again, what rights are you losing? Tell me, I'd love to know. I know one right that a lot of you should probably exercise is the right to remain silent, because you're making yourself look ignorant. Because your ignorance is on full display. You look foolish, melting down. And again, go to the beginning of the show on the video portion and look at the meltdown or listen to the meltdown that these people are having. Unbelievable. They've gone wacko. It's the fact that if your identity is based in an election and you're going to have a meltdown because your candidate did not win, where's your championship mindset? What about overcoming your obstacles in life to make yourself better? Are you just looking for a handout? There was one young white woman that was being interviewed on TV in Milwaukee or someplace like that. And they asked her if she would answer some questions. She said yes. Who are you voting for? Trump. Why? Last time I voted for Biden, was her response. He promised loan forgiveness from student loans and stuff. Well, that didn't materialize for her. Now she's working in the real world. She can't afford to pay our bills. So she's still living at home, paying off student loan, all the bills, the groceries and everything. And she's tired of it. So now she's switched to Trump, hoping the economy is better so she can get on with her life. That's what it's about. That's the type of thing that people are wanting now. And it doesn't matter if you're Black, Latino, male, female, whatever it is, everybody wants to have better opportunity. And I guess I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention this earlier, but Miami-Dade County, Miami, flipped for Trump. A majority of the people in Miami-Dade County, Miami, voted for Trump for the first time, a Republican, since like 1984. Cobb County, I think it is down in Texas. First time since probably the 1800s, I think they said, voted Republican. A suburb of Philadelphia, Bucks County, voted for a Republican for the first time since the 80s. So there's a lot of people out there that would normally vote blue. And all the margins, New York, New Jersey, instead of big blowouts. I think New Jersey was 6 points maybe for Kamala, when before it was a big blowout. I think, that whole blue wall of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania flipped, all those battlegrounds. He won all 7 battleground states, Nevada, Arizona. The country wants change. People want change because what's happening now? 70% of the country responded to, do you like the direction the country's going? 70% said no. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? No. Are you going to be better off in 4 years from now? We'll see. A lot of people are hoping that answer is yes because they voted for him, 70-some million. So if you're sitting there on the couch and you're ranting and raving and bitching about this and that, oh, how woe is you, you can't get up and go do your job. Pretty selfish of you is really what it comes down to. You're narcissistic and you're selfish. And unfortunately, the fact and the truth is these are just liberal women. So again, what rights have you lost? So now there's all these things going on. There's blue bracelet thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. But then there's this 4B. I thought at first this 4B thing had to be a joke, right? It could not be true, but it is. So in South Korea, apparently, which is a huge patriarchal society, women started to push back against that patriarchal society, and they stopped, or I guess women refused to date men. They refused to get married. They refused to have sex with a man, and they refused to have children. All pretty big in the patriarchal society of South Korea. So now feminists and liberal women are adopting this 4B movement here in America so that it's a resistance based on, I guess, gender expectations or whatever. But now women here in America, because they lost the vote, they're trying to push back and they're going to adopt these things. They're going to refuse to date men. They're going to refuse to get married. They're going to refuse to have sex with men. They're going to refuse to have children here in America because they lost an election, which goes back to that first video with that woman trying to shave her head. That was the whole point of it. So the relevance or the resistance not only involves withdrawing from dating, but rejecting prevalent gender beauty standards. So again, she was like, why am I going to be beautiful? Why am I going to be skinny? Why am I going to be all this in that first video? Because apparently she doesn't have pride in herself. In a conservative and traditional society, alternative forms of protest in the 4B movement, again, this stems from South Korea, push back against men. We're not going to date men, not get married, not have sex with men, not have children. Not only define the rigid beauty norms and traditional gendered expectations, but they're going to shave their heads and they're going to choose not to wear bras. I think we did that in the 1960s, didn't we? We burned our bras in the 1960s. I wasn't around, but took history class. And so there you have it. So a lot of women are out there shaving their heads. Now we'll see if they actually do it. I actually went on social media and I saw all these on TikTok. I love trolling people on TikTok. And I saw all these women talking about 4B, how they're engaging in 4B. They're going to take on 4B. And my post was literally, lovely hair. Can't wait to see you bald. That's it. You've got lovely hair. Can't wait to see your bald posts. And a lot of them tried to strike it down as like hate speech or something. But it's true. I mean, then again, the sensitivity of them, right? You're claiming to do something. So, hey, can't wait for you to do it. They're not going to do it. And then here's the other kicker that a lot of other women are picking up on, and they're actually laughing about it, is that, okay, liberal women, you're telling me that you're not going to date men, you're not going to have sex, you're not going to have babies. You just killed the abortion. You just brought down. Thank you. Please do it. Because now we don't have to deal with all this stuff that you're dealing with. You just removed all the problems of society that we were fighting for politically by doing it. So please do that. Shave your head. And I've actually saw a couple women with shaved heads. Now, I don't know if they did that before. I don't want to make judgments because sometimes people may have like medical issues, cancer, chemotherapy, lose your hair. I'm not talking about that. These are women protesting the loss of Kamala Harris. They're going to shave their head, forget about makeup, forget about dating. I please shower, at least shower. Do that for yourself. But again, where's your pride? Where's your pride in yourself? Where's your pride in wanting to do better in life? Where's your pride in overcoming obstacles? Where's your pride in your mindset to, I want to achieve? What about all those videos where women are sitting there, moms sitting there, I got to go tell my daughter XYZ. Really? Why don't you instill in your daughter how to be successful? Why don't you instill in your daughter how to overcome problems in life? Instead of sitting there whining and crying and basically indoctrinating your kid, which they do anyways, why don't you sit there and create something out of it? In fact, I want to get to this in a minute. Let me get to the blue bracelet movement. So you have women shaving their heads, 4B movement. Again, I thought it was something made up, but it was actually from South Korea. And again, so now you're taking women in South Korea would love to be in a position of women here in America. Oh, your only problem is you lost an election? I would love to be a part of that. I would love to have my candidate lose an election and have all the freedoms that liberal women have here in this country to do whatever they want. You can't do that in South Korea. They would love to switch places with you. Now you have this blue bracelet movement. It's a TikTok trend where people wear blue friendship bracelets to signal that they're a safe person or that they didn't vote for Trump. It's to say that they, and this is the funny thing, the description from this one particular website says that the movement was founded by liberal white women after Vice President Kamala Harris lost the election. White people at the helm of the movement believed that they needed to let people of color know that they hadn't voted against them and against women. You know, there's a lot of people on social media, a lot of black women that voted for Trump, wearing the hat, Make America Great Again, the shirts. The fear of being misunderstood came from the demographic statistics that we talked about that released after the election that showed more white women and men voted for Trump than Harris. Remember, Trump also beat Hillary Clinton, a white woman. So the blue friendship bracelet, I guess, is similar to the safety pin movement that everybody wore after Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. Okay. So again, here's my, I guess I was coming to it, but Bucks County in Philadelphia. Starr County is what it was. I don't know what I said earlier, but Starr County in Texas, first Republican presidential candidate since 1892. The county is considered the most Hispanic in America, with around 97% of its population identifying as such, voting for Trump. But here's the real thing, okay? This is what it comes down to. If you want to do something besides going to social media and boo-hooing on the couch or beating up your steering wheel or whatever it is that you're doing, shaving your head and all that nonsense, that's all equivalent to posting a black square on Instagram for Black Lives Matter and doing things that are completely irrelevant. And if you shave your head, probably regretful come tomorrow or the next day when your anger wears off. And then eventually down the line, when you do see that guy, I cannot tell you how many times in life someone has told me they will never get married. Never, ever, 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 ever get married. Done deal, end of story, ever. I'm like, really? No, ever. I mean, they were 1,000% convinced. They're married with kids. I'm not dating ever. Single. Now they're engaged, dating, whatever. It happens. So you're pissed off right now because you lost an election. You're going to go 4B. You're not going to date this, that. You shave your head, and all of a sudden, Mr. Wonderful walks by, and you're like, whoa, you just screwed yourself. because he's not going to look your way. But here's this. Why don't you put your effort into something more important that is helpful to help women? Human trafficking, forced labor, sex trafficking, forced marriages, domestic servitude, child soldiers. Across the world, these are the top 5 things that involve human trafficking. Domestic violence. News came out that Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, smacked his girlfriend around. Smacked her so hard in the south of France one time that she spun around. No one called him out on that. There are close to 50 million people in modern slavery in the world. 12 million are children. You're worried about your kid's IEP and your kid's education? Well, good, you should be. But are you going on social media and saying he's not going to be educated now because Donald Trump is president? Well, you know, your kid is free. Your kid is free. You can plop him in front of the TV. You can plop him in front of the iPad. Go do whatever the hell you want. Let him do whatever he wants or she wants. Your kid is not in slavery. It's not of the one of the 12 million kids that are in slavery. 54% of those trapped in modern slavery are women and girls. You have the freedom to shave your head. You have the freedom to not date. You have the freedom to go onto social media and rant and rave and cry and beat your steering wheel. People don't have cars. 54% of those trapped in modern slavery, women and girls. They would love to be in your shoes and know that their only problem was that your candidate lost an election. Sex trafficking is the most common type of trafficking in the U.S. Child sex trafficking, reported in all 50 states. Human trafficking, $150 billion industry. Abortion, transgender ideology, sex trafficking or human trafficking, multi-billion-dollar industries. You think they're going anywhere? Where's the P. Diddy list? Where's the Epstein list? Human trafficking is the second most profitable illegal industry in the United States. So instead of shaving your head, wearing blue bracelets, following some ideology of 4B, which you're really bastardizing and minimizing the effects of women in South Korea and what they have to go through, it's selfish, period. All you're doing is thinking about yourself. So why don't you get involved in one of these things? Protecting women and children and others. Get involved in human trafficking. What about getting involved in trying to house the homeless, feed the hungry, or many of the other real problems that people suffer from? Old people being lonely in retirement homes somewhere, being dropped off, forgotten by their family. What about food banks, rescue missions? Holidays are coming up as the time of this broadcast. Why don't you volunteer, not just one day on Thanksgiving to feed the homeless and call it a day and feel good about yourself, but be committed to doing something. Why don't you take the New Year's resolution and say you're going to do something to help for an entire year? Because shaving your head and wearing blue bracelets just shows that you're a spoiled brat, cares about nobody else. Here's someone that has survived sex trafficking.
I am Dr. Niecy Hamilton, and I am a survivor of human trafficking. When I was 15, I had aged out of foster care, and I was homeless. And I remember running into a homegirl who told me, hey, you know, I have a solution for your problem. I work as a waitress at a strip club. You can use my ID to work at another strip club while I work at this strip club, and all you're doing is waitressing. You make money. My boyfriend will keep your baby, and hey, you know, you'll be good. As the boyfriend's keeping my baby, he goes, you can't get your kid back unless you make me $200 a day. He's going to the strip club, bragging about how much money he's making off of me. And there's another pimp that's sitting in the club. He sends a message to the girls that he's already pimping out to me that I can make $200 a day faster if I'm no longer a waitress, but a stripper, because he wants to see what am I willing to give up or what am I willing to sacrifice. That was barrier testing. Let me test your limits. the betrayal comes in, baby, you ain't been working. It's hard for me to get your hair and your nails done like I used to. I need you to bring in some money. So we're talking about from 15 to 19. I had already been trafficked and sleeping with every bit of about 1,500 men at this point. I made a decision to enlist into the Navy without my pimp knowing about it. And when he found out, I still got beat. And I remember begging the officer, please don't arrest me. Please don't arrest me. I said, I'm leaving to the Navy. This is the only chance. This is the only chance I got to get away. I need you to help me. And he looked at me and he said, I believe you. But had I been arrested that night, I wouldn't have survived human trafficking.
So tell me again about your problems of Kamala Harris not winning the election. Real world problems. Someone being trafficked, aged out of foster care at the age of 15. Working in a strip club as a waitress, a stripper, and then being pimped out. 15 to 19. Baby being kidnapped and held hostage until she brought money. And then finally being arrested, getting into the Navy, saved her life. So tell me again your real world problems that Kamala Harris lost an election and woe is you. Why don't you get involved in something that matters? If you're all for women's rights and you think, again, if you think you lost your rights, what rights did you lose? Start there. And then if you really care about women and children, why don't you get involved in something that makes a difference? Why don't you get out there and see what the real world is like? If you're a mom with a kid with IEP, are you the best advocate? Or are you just trying to do bare minimum because you're exhausted, you're tired? I understand that. I get that. I've worked with special needs, special education children pretty exhaustively over the last few years. I see how it is. I understand. It can be that way. Do you have help? Do you have an advocate to help you? If you are a woman that's bitching and moaning on social media, why don't you start a support group to help moms with children with IEP? Why don't you start a business that will allow for moms to maybe drop off their kids with IEPs or with special disabilities so that they can at least get an hour to breathe? We see a lot of videos about babies and new moms and how exhausting it is. Imagine how exhausting it is to have a special needs child that has ADHD or dyslexia or something. Why don't you start a business or volunteer your time is more importantly, forget the business aspect, volunteer your time to help tutor, to help read, take an hour of your day, get off of social media and go do something productive. Because you go on social media and you want the world to sympathize with you, and you do get some sympathy, but boo-hoo, cry me a river. Just because Kamala Harris lost, and that's the reason why you're all disgruntled, forlorn, lamenting, blubbering. That's selfish. That's narcissistic. Go do something that really matters. Go do something that will help women and children. Instead of the look at me on social media, I'm so sad. You got to be kidding me. And for those of you that do it, congratulations. Good for you. Why don't you go on social media and tell people how they can do it? Because unless we come together, nobody's going to survive this world. You think that your little bubble now is problematic. As the world and the globe continues to get smaller, and what I mean by that, people become connected. We've got cyberbullying going on. We recently did a show about Aubrey Wyatt, who was cyberbullied to death, or I guess bullied to death. But we got cyberbullying. You've got predators. You've got domestic abusers. You've got drugs and alcohol and other types of addiction. We've got a world of problems. And for those of you that are saying, oh, he's a bad man, and you're not a bad person. You haven't done bad things. I'm sure you have. We all have. So instead of having outraged with these moronic and idiotic videos on social media, especially TikTok, why don't you do something about it that matters? Why don't you go to a domestic violence shelter and help out? Go to a foster care. Foster somebody. Take somebody in if they age out of foster care so that they can avoid being sex trafficked. A lot of things you could do. But being outraged on social media with your videos, smashing your car's steering wheel and lamenting in the bathroom and curled up on the couch solves nothing, proves nothing, except that you're weak-minded. And that maybe you should go back and listen to some of our other podcasts that tell you and show you how to have a championship mindset. This is Two Steps Ahead Podcast, encouraging you to take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. Check out our website, radiowarp.com. That's radio, W-A-R-P, radiowarp.com. You can click on the Two Steps Ahead Podcast logo, and all of our past shows pop up. If you click on the video, it'll take you probably to our Rumble page, or you can probably just watch it right there on the radiowarp.com website. But you can also go to our Rumble page and see all of our past videos. There's an orange banner across the page that says SoundCloud. You can go listen to the audio version. You can actually download these versions of the audio version from SoundCloud and take it with you on the go. We are also on YouTube and pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Edify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia. We're pretty much everywhere. Do an internet search of TWO, Two Steps Ahead Podcast, and we pop up there as well. You can email the show, twostepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com, twostepsaheadpodcast@gmail.com. If there's anything you need, reach out. If I can't help you, I will point you in the direction of somebody that can, so you don't have to feel alone. You don't have to feel like there's no alternative, no place to go. Reach out. And if I can't help you, I will find somebody that can help you. We're on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Yes, Facebook, TikTok. So we're everywhere. And again, you can reach out on those platforms as well and direct message me if you want to. And so, again, we're pretty easy to find. Some tough love today, but I think it's required because, again, how is it that you can sit there and say, woe is me because Kamala Harris lost the election, and say my rights are being taken away, my child's education being taken away? First of all, we all know that's nonsense. It's not going to happen. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid. And most importantly, educate yourself. It's the internet. Google, Yahoo, Bing, Internet Explorer, I don't know, whatever else you use, DuckDuckGo, Quant, whatever it is you use out there. Go do the research yourself. Look it up. It's easy to find that information. Don't get your information from social media, and definitely don't shave your head because you will regret it. Two Steps Ahead Podcast, encouraging you, my friend. Take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great. I'm Son Edom. Hey, thanks for listening. Do tell a friend. And until next time, God bless.